All right. Hello. Welcome, everyone. My name is Mick Orlowski. I'm with Camera Bits, and we are about to have the Camera Bits panel discussion on sports photography. The industry of photography involved in capturing the grace, the power, the speed, athleticism, and just sheer drama of the human form in competition. We have some top sports photographers here with us today. We're going to be talking a little bit about how they get their images. They're going to share some of their tips and what it's like to be a professional sports photographer. It's kind of I consider it's the glam, the rock and roll, the rock stars of the photography world of the sports photographers and also the concert photographers. I say myself, but sports photography is really where you get some of the most intense and cutting edge imagery out there. Today we have joining us Stephanie Lovell from. Stephanie creates works that depict the beauty, the strength, and the emotions of sports to make her audience experience the artistry and feel the passion of the game. She's a graduate of the University of Oregon School of Journalism and Communication and has worked for Fox Sports and Let's Go Warriors. She's also worked in digital departments for the Los Angeles Sparks, the Sacramento Kings, and Golden One Center. We also have Keith Cephus, based in Virginia Beach, Washington, or excuse me, Virginia. But I believe covers a lot of sports in the Washington, D.C. area as well, specializing in sports photography, documentary photography. He does weddings and editorial assignments. He's been doing this for over 20 years and photographs all types of sports for the NFL, the NBA, MLB, and more. Keith has also been recognized as one of the most sought-after wedding photographers on the East Coast. And finally, we have Hannah Foslein. Grew up loving sports. But when she was 16, she realized her passion for photography at the Minneapolis Institute of Arts. Through her imagery, she converts the beauty, wonder, and emotion that she sees every day in sports. Her clients include Getty Images and the Associated Press, and her work has appeared in publications all around the world. She's based in Minneapolis, but she does commercial and editorial work all throughout this globe. Welcome, the three of you, to our panel discussion. As I said, we're going to do this talk should take about 45 minutes. We're going to do some getting started in the industry tips. We're going to talk about best practices. We're going to do a Q&A at the end. So if you have questions and can put them into the chat or in the comments, our producer will grab them and we'll see if they're relevant to what we're talking about. And if not, we'll save them for the end. But let's get into it right now. I'm going to go right to Keith, and we're going to talk about, Keith, how did you get started as a sports photographer?
Basically, I got started at a very young age. My son played flag football, and all I did, I just started taking pictures of him, and his team, and then all of a sudden I started doing high school, and then I started working part-time for this magazine called Hampton Roads Magazine, and I went to the sports editor, and I said, hey, look, there's no sports presence at all in this magazine. So I said, look, if you support me, I'll go ahead and start the ball rolling in the sports arena. So what I did probably about 15 years ago, I went to the director of media relations for the Redskins. And I said, hey, look, I'm the sports editor for Hampton Roads Magazine, and I want to start covering some games because, as you well know, Hampton Roads, we don't have a big sports team down here. So DC is a team that we've adapted, and there's a huge presence of Redskins fans in this area. So about 15 years ago, I started shooting the Redskins. And before you know it, with that contact, I started shooting the Pro Bowl. Then I started shooting the Washington Nationals, the Baltimore Ravens, the Baltimore Orioles. And then I went down south and I started covering the Charlotte Hornets and the Carolina Panthers. So basically it started with just an idea. I pitched this concept to the magazine, and before you know it, it manifested into something that's very tangible. And I've just had a great, great sports journey with it. And I'm just very excited. This year, in December, I covered the national championship with the Alabama and Georgia. And that was like the epitome of a sports opportunity. I mean, my buddy Kevin Gerard, he works for USA Today. So he handpicked this sports team of about 15 people. And I was just blessed to be one of those 15. And I must tell you, it was the best sporting opportunity of my sports journey. And I'm so in debt to Kevin Gerard. If you're out there, Kevin, he's in Dallas, Texas. I owe you, my brother. And we're going to shoot the next college football championship in San Francisco. So young lady, Miss Lovell, get ready, because we're coming to your town. So you might get that opportunity, my friend. So just get ready.
All right. Yeah, let's go to Stephanie. Stephanie, how did you get your start? And yeah, tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I grew up, I was always an athlete my whole life and was also a very creative person as well. And when I got to the University of Oregon, I actually had a handful of injuries and had to stop playing sports. So I started working for my school's athletic department, just doing a lot of on-camera broadcasting, originally as a sideline reporter, kind of just explaining what was going on in the middle of the games, giving your inning recaps and that kind of stuff for baseball. And one day I was cold at a baseball game and saw a camera laying on the ground and kind of just wanted to go stand in the sun and was like, this could be a really cool idea. I'm going to get warm. I'll take some shots. It'll be great. And kind of just tried it out, fell in love with it, realized that this was actually something that I was very passionate about. And it allowed me to still be able to get as close to the game as possible and still feel my competitiveness that I had as an athlete, but still be able to focus that energy into a creative way and to be able to continue to help the teams that I love so much.
That's very cool to to translate that, because I think the as a photojournalist covering sports, you feel that same adrenaline. You have that the game is ready coming, and I think that a lot of people I saw. Well, anyways, we'll get to Hannah as well. I wanted to hear from Hannah how you got your start, and Hannah, if you could talk about a little bit about the importance of being aligned with a publication or an outlet first as you get your start.
Yeah, so I got my start. I actually interned with the Minnesota Twins out of college, and it was really helpful for me. And I was actually encouraged by my boss at that time to go and talk to the other photographers there, which got me starting to network with the Associated Press people, who then were able to, once my internship was wrapping up, were able to give me a contract with the Associated Press. Associated Press was sending me to games, and I was starting to meet Getty Images staff photographers, and they started recommending me for jobs. So I do most of my work for those two companies. I do work directly with sports teams in town through their team photographer. So I'll come in and I'll second shoot, or I'll fill in for a game here or there. The Minnesota Wild has me do like a marketing photo shoot every year. And that's really great. But for me, it was kind of this word of mouth marketing. And once one organization vouched for me and I got myself in the door, I was able to say, hey, I'm able to do this. And so then other people were willing to kind of take a look at me, because I had the Twins say, here's Hannah.
Very cool. And having that sort of mentor relationship, you sort of mentioned that, I assume that was very important to how you.
Yeah, I absolutely love, Bruce Cluckone was the team photographer at the Twins during my internship. And Jim Moan is still the staff photographer at the Minneapolis Bureau. He just had 45 years with the Associated Press. And I worked the Twins game last night with both of those guys. So I still see them all the time, but they are guys that from day one took me under their wings and definitely showed me the ropes in a way that I wasn't necessarily seeing at workshops. And also every market's a little bit different with their unwritten rules of the game. And so it was very, very sort of helpful to have these two guys say, like, here, also show me their workflows, which I know we'll go more into, but I would be able to sit behind Jim Moan during a Twins game during my internship and say, okay, you're currently on the second baseman because of how the shift is right now, right? And he would say yes, and he'd say it's this batter, and he would really be able to describe to me his thought process while he was shooting.
Okay, so it gets very specific then for in terms of covering specific positions in a game. And
yeah.
Okay, very cool. Stephanie, I know we heard a little bit of Keith also gave a shout out to one of his inspirations. Did you have anyone that really helped show you the ropes or give you sort of a perspective as to what this career was going to be like?
Yes, I would say Zamani Feelings. He is actually a photographer based out in Pennsylvania, and I met him on a Facebook photography chat group, and he has kind of just taken me under his wing. Even though we don't see each other in person a lot, I can call him up anytime, any day, ask him if I have trouble with my camera, or ask him to go over my shots and kind of just pick his brains about kind of his workflow. Also, Charles Winslow, who is an NFL photographer, he also has been incredibly helpful. He actually was able to get me passes to shoot major events such as the Big Three basketball tournament and the women's Final Four that happened in Columbus, Ohio just this last month, which was hands down one of the best sporting events I've probably ever covered, with 3 buzzer beaters, upset wins. It was incredible. So definitely shout out to both of those guys. They have just taught me everything and helped me along the way, and I owe them everything.
That's very cool. Yeah, I think in any industry, you know, having those people to show you the ropes can be very important. But photography, I think, is very special in that respect because it is such a experience-based thing. You can have all the talent in the world, but having that someone to tell you like when to apply that and those lessons is very important.
Definitely.
I'm going to switch to Keith here. It's Keith, for someone who shoots both weddings and sports, talk a little bit about like your prep for both of them. How does your prep for a wedding differ from your prep for a big sporting event?
Well, ironically, I just got back from West Virginia. I had a 3-day Indian wedding in Charleston, West Virginia, and we shot probably about 12,000 photos. When it comes to an Indian wedding, it's usually 3 days. Like the first day, they do what's called the henna night. You know, when they do the tattoo work on the bride-to-be and all her bridesmaids and family members. And then Friday night, they do what's called a garb. It's like a celebration. And that could last probably about 6 or 7 hours. And then the wedding itself, you know, we start at 6 in the morning. So I had a 4 o'clock wake-up call. And then we shoot from 6 in the morning till 1 a.m. the next day. And it's probably, we shot maybe 28 to 30 hours in 3 days. And it's relentless. And it just builds your character, it builds your stamina. And I just really enjoy it. I mean, just having the opportunity to shoot the biggest day of somebody's life, it's just amazing. And the Indian culture is very colorful, it's very festive. And I consider it's like the mafia. Like if they don't feel comfortable with you, they're never going to hire you. You have to show some type of body of work to give them some type of comfort. And we penetrated the Indian market for the past 15 years. In fact, I've flown all the way to Africa to shoot an Indian wedding about 3 years ago. And it's just been so rewarding on every level.
And when you're preparing, do you work off like an actual physical checklist, or do you just keep it in your head? Like when you're, you know, the few hours before the before game time or whatever shoot you're doing, do you work with like how do you stay prepared? How do you not forget, you know, extra batteries? How do you keep that all straight?
That's a great question. Basically, I have an assistant, you know, and he is my right-hand man. We bring battery charge. We have a checklist. We bring batteries, extra batteries, battery charges. We'll bring like maybe 15, 32 to 64 gig flash cards. We'll bring a plethora of camera bodies. You know, I've got the 1DX Mark II. I've got the 5DX, 5DX3. And then I have the 5D Mark IV, and then I have the 5D SR. So I mean, we've got the gear, we've got every piece of L glass. We shoot pro photos for flashes. We bring about 4 600 EX2s, and then we bring artificial light. I have this light called the Stella Pro, which is an amazing light. It's about $2,000. It goes underwater. So for all you underwater photographers, I highly recommend the Stella Pro. But we give our brides an experience. You know, we give them multiple lighting techniques. We shoot a lot of available light, a lot of window light, some pro photos, some speed light. So we just hit them with a lighting arsenal, and they seem to like it. It's been working for us, and we've had a lot of success in that market.
Awesome. Awesome. Hannah, how about you? Do you work from like a physical checklist when you're preparing, or is it just something you keep in your head?
Preseason NFL is really the only time that I start doing a checklist, and I get made fun of because I write numbers just down my arms. But I separate it with home team, offensive line, visiting team defensive line, visiting team offensive line, and then special teams. So there's like 5 or 6 rows on my arm for preseason football games, just because that's easier for me to look down at that, how I hold my camera, to just look there, than to have something taped to my monopod or my lens where I have to spin and look. So I can just look down and make sure I'm getting all my players I need to get. I
was going to say, so you're trying to actually capture like at least one good photo of everyone on the preseason roster?
Yeah. Yeah. So everybody, on the preseason roster, even if it's a headshot in the bench area, just get something on each of those guys. But as far as my gear, all my stuff gets packed into Think Tank. Like, I can look at my Think Tank bag and know something's missing. Okay. Just at first glance. So everything's just, I have a roller and I have a backpack, and so I know when things are out of place or missing. I have a couple sort of cord pouches like this, where this is just my cell phone chargers and a couple extra dongles. So I just know where everything is, because Think Tank has thought of how messy we all are.
Yep. No, we love them as well. Stephanie, how about you? How do you keep things straight in the moments leading up to an event?
I would say I'm pretty similar to both Hannah and Keith. I have a physical checklist that I keep in my house or my office, just to make sure that I do have my extra batteries, all my cords, all my chargers, all of that kind of stuff. But similar to Hannah, I pretty much keep everything like in my bags and in my areas that I know that I'm going to need to bring to the events. I always have like my tripod and my monopod in my trunk, just in case I need it for a random shoot at times. And I pretty much, like Hannah, can just look in my backpack and know, like, okay, I'm missing my 85 lens, or I need an extra battery, or that kind of stuff. But I also do have a physical list just in case, because I know myself, I'm a very scatterbrained type of person with a lot of different events going on and stuff. So I like to have a double list.
Right on. Yeah. Okay. So Keith, now we're going to get into actually the shooting. Keith, do you find any particular sport to be more difficult? What's like the hardest sport to cover for you personally?
I would say baseball. Baseball to me is very, very difficult. It can be very dangerous. I've actually got hit in the head, not on a line drive, but, I've gotten a couple of shots. But the thing about a baseball that makes it very tough to shoot is because if it's 1-0 and if it's in the 8th inning, that means nobody's manufacturing runs. So the only thing you have are great shots of the pitcher and just people in the outfield. Like, there's no one going to second or third. There's no one sliding because it's 1-0. So you can spend 3 hours shooting a baseball game, and if the final score is 1-0, if you're a photographer, there's no photo opportunities at all. So to me, I think baseball would be the most difficult thing to shoot because of the lack of runs. And if you got a pitcher's duel, there's not going to be a lot of runs.
Mm-hmm. Stephanie, how about you? What do you think is the most difficult sport to shoot that you've shot?
Ooh. Well, I actually did a workshop just a couple of weeks ago where I dabbled in a lot of sports that I haven't shot before. And I would say that track and field and indoor volleyball are both extremely, extremely hard. Track and field, just because there is so many different events happening at all times, it's very easy to get overwhelmed with just all that is track. You have the javelin, you have the races, you have the hammer throw, you have steeplechase, and figuring out the times of where you need to be to make sure you get the shots that you want to get can be a little overwhelming at times, but also being able to find clean backgrounds with track is extremely, extremely difficult just because of all the different events and the people and everyone walking around. You can have like a random foot sticking out or a fan doing something, and you have to find your angles and plan your shots very carefully. So I would say getting there to the event early, if possible, is always definitely a very strong suggestion. With indoor volleyball, my biggest struggle I found was being able to track the actual action with the net, because it's a very vertical sport. A lot of times, at least I found, because it was only my second or third time shooting volleyball, if you pre-focus, sometimes if you're on autofocus, it would grab the net at the very last minute, and then you either have the net in focus and the person's face out of focus, or maybe their eyes when they jump up are right at where the net is hitting them. And so that doesn't make for a very cool shot. But I found shooting through the action in those moments is very, very helpful, especially with like volleyball. You can have a reaction shot tell the story of the ace hit or the game-winning point just as much as that actual spike or the set. So just being able to find the different perspectives to find shots in the difficult sports, I found was very helpful.
Yeah. You talked about the workshop. I believe that was the Sports Shooter Academy. That's correct?
It was. And Hannah was actually one of my instructors there. It was super, super fun.
I wanted to definitely give them a shout out. If anyone out there is interested in becoming a sports shooter, Sports Shooter Academy is definitely friends with Camera Bits. We do some work with them. We're huge fans of what they do. Hannah, could you talk a little bit about like that, what the Sports Shooter Academy is all about?
Yeah, so it's actually a really fantastic thing. I was a student twice, which was fantastic for me early on in my career. They spend 5 days. You have kind of a day of classes and workshops, and then you go out and shoot events. And we have 2 to 3 faculty members on site at every event. And so if you have any questions, you can ask us. And I know, like my last day, I was at water polo, and I had a lot of fun going up and asking people, do you know who's winning this game right now? So it's little things that you're not thinking of because you're just trying to get the shot, that to know what the next shot is, you need to know what's going on in the game as well. And so that was sort of that. And then we do a last day of kind of final critiques. And I know this year we did a few more speeches on that day too. So it's an absolutely fantastic workshop. I love it. I don't know. They keep asking me and I keep going back. So
I've heard that before from other sports shooters. Sometimes the way you connect to the event is so much different than an actual like spectator in terms of awareness of the score. Or like, you may have a feel for the game situation, but you may not have any real idea of what like the bigger picture is because you're so focused.
Yeah, I have it where I have a lot of friends that are like, oh my gosh, your job's so cool. You get to go to all these sporting events. And I'm like, I am so tunnel vision and focused. And it just happened with the Minneapolis Miracle game where you could tell me a play that happened in that game. I don't remember it. I don't know what happened in that game because I was so tunnel focused that it was on to the next. It was get up and move and go to the next shot. And that was just my mindset in that game, which was such a fantastic place to be. And now I'm like, can I be in that spot every time I shoot? Because like, I anticipated everything correctly. So.
And do you have a most difficult sport or a sport that you find particularly challenging?
Anything with water, especially talking about the water polo as I was watching those guys, and but swimming has been trying to get in the freestyle, knowing which side they breathe. That gets a little difficult. So sometimes with the bigger swimmers, at least you can Google and you can find out. But when you're doing kind of a college tournament or something, you don't necessarily have that.
Keith, this question is for you. Do you also find that true? Like after an event is over, a sporting event, do you find that you have a different sense of it, or a particularly unique view of what just happened?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, we as sports photographers, we're students of the game. We prepare just like athletes. You want to look at people's, like if a quarterback is 3rd and 8, he's probably not going to hand the ball up to the running back. So as a sports photographer, we have to key in either on the wide receiver or the tight end. So I think just anticipating and being a student of the game and being knowledgeable of that sport, makes for a really, really good sports photographer. Just knowing the game and knowing teams' tendencies.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Knowing that, being able to anticipate where the action's going to go is probably very huge for that. I remember one time I tried shooting a soccer match, and I thought, oh, this is going to probably be similar to the concert photography I'm used to. Nope, not even close. Not even close. I couldn't predict where anything was going, and that was a real eye-opening experience for me personally. Stephanie, can you talk a little bit about your process in the game as well? Like, how are you making those anticipatory calls? What are you looking for when you're covering an event? How do you keep your eyes peeled for the right moment?
Well, when I first go into an arena, I kind of just like to observe and kind of take in the space that I'm going to be shooting in. If the guys are doing warm-ups, I kind of watch kind of their tendencies just to pick up on kind of who the stars are going to be. I mean, obviously research that beforehand, but knowing like who's going to play, who's going to start, who maybe has an injury that could affect their minutes in playing time are always very and then from there, I kind of just, similar to Hannah and Keith, like walk into the game. I mean, really anticipating the action is probably the most beneficial advice I could say, because you need to give your camera time to pre-focus on the action before it actually happens. So if you are constantly trying to play catch up because you're not aware of what's going to happen, you're always going to find yourself being that half a second behind with your shots and not being able to capture the facial emotion or the full perspective of the shot that you're trying to get. So really just being able to lock in and kind of focus on individual players, noticing who's getting on fire, who's sinking all their threes or hitting really strong lines down to third, could possibly get a home run, acknowledging who's having a really strong game that day, I've found has been really helpful in getting those really key moments.
Excellent. That's it's definitely a talent, but it's something that you can cultivate as well. I mean, I don't know, when you step away from it a while, does it take you a while to sort of get back into that rhythm, that flow?
Yes, I would say it definitely, especially because I shoot a lot of basketball, taking like a month or two off during the off season, your first game might be a little shaky, but at the end of the day, I kind of think of it as riding a bike. I mean, you know what you're doing, you know what you're supposed to do, and you know the shots you're supposed to get. So maybe just taking that first quarter to mentally focus a little more on the timing of your shots and when you're shooting. You might need to do that, but you're pretty good to go once you have the hang of it, I would say.
Mm-hmm. And do you have any sort of tips for as far as anticipating that thing? Like, how do you pre-visualize a shot? I know you said you maybe use some manual focus when you were shooting volleyball. Is there anything else that you could say to speak to that about?
Well, I usually always shoot without my stabilizer on for my lens when I'm shooting sports, just to help track the action and make sure that those shots can be as crisp as possible. Also with basketball, I usually track the ball because that's usually where a lot of the action is going to be. So following the point guard and then knowing he's probably going to swing to the left or the right. So anticipating which guy is going to break out of probably the screen to get open. Kind of just like Keith and Hannah said, knowing the game and being a student of the game and knowing the rules really help you be able to track that action before it actually happens.
I have a question about, I'm going to direct this one to Hannah. Modern cameras, especially that are pitched to the sports market, have many different autofocus modes in styles of autofocus. What do you have anything that you can say about like what style of autofocus works for you? Is there any tips you can give as far as choosing a setting?
I am going to be terrible and not helpful whatsoever. Because honestly, I have different focus works with different lens and camera combinations. Okay. And so if you're having trouble focusing, sometimes it's just making a smaller group, making sure that you have less focus points. I tend to shoot on a 9-point, or Nikon has a 3D group setting. I don't actually think it's called 3D, but it's a group setting. Those are kind of my two favorite ones. But like yesterday, there was a visit to the mound and I wasn't getting the picture sharp. And so I just quickly switched to a 5 so that I could put that dot right on his face and make sure he was in focus instead of the backs of the other guys talking to him. I mean,
nice. Keith, same question to you. I noticed you got a chuckle out of that question. Tell me about your experiences with autofocus. And
I like to shoot on AI servo. AI servo to me does a really good job of tracking the subject, and a lot like what Hannah says, I like the single spot focus and dot, because to me it just keys in on what I wanted to key in on. And whenever I'm shooting, I like depth of field, but I don't like shooting at 2.8 because sometimes when you shoot at 2.8, sometimes you get soft images at a key moment. So I like to bring it back to f4.0. That way it gives you a little bit more latitude so you can capture the ball and the player at the same time when it comes to football. So that's
can I just add something?
Yes.
So talking about that is I actually researched the sweet spot of my 400 millimeter, and it is 3.5, and so that's why I shoot everything at.
Yes.
Okay.
So
knowing your gear, hugely important when you're doing this, having that experience and the knowledge to go out and look that stuff up.
Right, because there's a lot of young photographers and they want that bokeh, everything at 2.0 and 2.8. But once you've been a veteran in the game, 2.8 can be your detriment. And like what Hannah said, 3.5 and 4.0 is that sweet spot.
Stephanie, would you agree with that? Is that how your experience as well?
Yeah, I definitely would say that I used to be one of those shooters that shot at 0.8. And as I started to grow and talk to a lot of my teachers and mentors, I quickly figured out that 3.5 to 4 is kind of the sweet spot for where you want to be. I've noticed you just get the most crisp and clean shots, and you're able to really go into your editing and really touch it up the best you can while still having that really great depth of field at the same time.
Yeah, and I think we're in a sort of a golden age right now of ISO, where maybe a few years ago, or maybe more than a few years ago, like just the need for speed was so great that a lot of photographers were forced into wider apertures because they needed to get faster shutter speeds. But now, like, we can shoot at 12,000 ISO in some cases, and the images are looking pretty good. Yeah, the equipment now for sports is just amazing. Is there a particular piece of equipment outside your camera or lens that you like really couldn't live without? Stephanie, we'll start with you.
Oh, that's a good question. I would definitely have to say my speedlight flashes, because I mean they're so portable. You can use them for portraits. You can use them for lighting a player for warm-ups. You can use it in tunnels. You can use it in just so many different variety of situations. I would also have to say my step stool, because I'm a very short person, and kind of just being able to get those different perspectives and be able to get higher up is definitely something that I, as a short person, have acknowledged is quite difficult. So if you can get one of those little, like, it's not a 2-step, just like the 1-step fold up plastic step stool, I would definitely suggest that that's like a go-to photographer tool.
That holds true for concert photography as well. Anyone out there interested, any kind of events, I think those are amazing. Keith, you talked about your Stella lights. Outside of the camera and lenses and that light, is there another piece of gear that you just couldn't live without?
Probably my my teleconverter. I got like the 1.6 teleconverter. You know, sometimes I'll put that on a 400, and I could literally be on the opposite side of the field. And if the opposing team is on like the 5-yard line, I could still get a really good shot with my 400 millimeter. So yeah, that teleconverter is worth the price of gold. You know, you lose a stop, but by the end of the day, you know, if it's a 1 o'clock game and the sun is bright, you know, it's not that big of a deal. And rain gear, protective gear for your camera is a must, you know, because you will find yourself and by yourself, because, you know, you spend a lot of money for this gear and you have to protect it. And I'm sure Hannah can relate to me as well. Protect your gear, because it'll protect you. And if you don't take care of it, you're gonna lose it.
Yep. Hannah, how about you, as terms of a piece of equipment that you couldn't live without?
Well, I'm just gonna start because yesterday was a almost 2-hour rain delay, followed by starting the game while it was still raining. And so, yes, rain gear. I'm known for having additional, at least there's these things that are like plastic bags, but they have the drawstring on the front and they have a hole for I have like 10 of those in my locker, and I hand those out to every photographer who doesn't have rain gear at games, because it makes me cringe, and like I don't want their gear to be ruined, and I get a little mama bear on them every so often. But for me, it's not even camera gear. It is my phone and headphones. I have to have those on me. And people know when my phone's dying. Because I'm like, it's at 30%. Am I gonna make it through the rest of the game? I listen to music. It helps zone me. Every so often, if I get stressed out and my timing's wrong or whatever, I have an app called Headspace, and I do an SOS thing that just helps my breathing. And all those things, I am a very anxious shooter in person. And so those things just calm me down in the game.
Interesting. Actually, I have a question from the audience here. We were talking about the sweet spot of focusing being around f4, at least for some lenses. And they're talking about shooting indoors at basketball arenas. They were asking about shooting at 2.8 there if you need the light. I was going to ask you, if you were faced with a choice between shooting at f4 or bumping up, if like say you weren't getting enough light, would you stop up to 2.8, or would you bump up your ISO? Like, which would you choose? What's more important for you? And we'll go. We'll start with Stephanie on that one, because you're the most thoughtful.
Well, I was actually thinking about what my answer was going to be. Personally, I would say I would probably bump it down, but I'm not as much of a veteran shooter as either of the other two people. I'm not sure if my answer actually would be the correct answer to say, but that would just be my initial thought, would be to bump it down so that I can still keep the ISO the same. Well, unless I know I have some space to bump my ISO up without getting it grainy, because that's when our most concern is.
How about for you, Keith? What do you consider more important? Keeping their aperture where you like it, or will you flex on the aperture to keep your ISO solid?
I crank up the ISO, hands down, because by the end of the day, these cameras, these modern day cameras, are so good as far as, you know, noise reduction and things like that. And sometimes when you shoot at 4.0, you're going to get the shot as opposed to 2.8, especially indoors. I mean, and plus it varies from gym to gym. Some gyms are well lit and some are not. But, you know, I get really clean images at 6,400, you know, and I like to stop the speed at maybe 640 at f4, even sometimes f4.5. So yeah, I'm not really concerned about the grain. More so, I'm concerned about getting the shot, you know, getting that dunk, getting the two guys diving on the floor, getting the ball and the face and the hands in focus more so than the grain. I can live with it.
How about you, Hannah? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I'm more likely to push my ISO, and then if I can, if I can't, I might lose a third on my shutter speed or 2/3. Okay. I might find a middle ground there. But yeah, I'm gonna want that f-stop if at all possible. But I do know that some gyms, especially if you're shooting prep sports or you know, kids, like those are some dark dungeons of things. So sorry.
Yeah. It's always a challenge to get that triangle where you want it, that exposure triangle. Yeah. Also, one of our audience asked about back button focus. I assume everyone here is using back button focus.
Yes.
Yeah, I see nods all around. For those who might not know, that's most of your modern cameras will have the default is when you half press your shutter, it will focus for you. You can change that in your camera settings. There's a button on the back where you can uncouple the focusing from your shooting and your exposure, so you can focus on holding on the back button to focus and then using the shutter just to take the shot. And that's fairly ubiquitous around the commercial shooting, especially in sports. It makes it faster. It makes it easier to maintain the proper focus when you're moving from different subjects. So every pro that I've encountered does use the back button focus. So hopefully that answers their question. Stephanie, tell me about what's like the most memorable moment, or is there any like particular story that has stood out to you?
As a shooter, I would probably say the women's final four that just happened. That was an incredible experience, just to be around the intensity of that whole just 3-day period. I mean, we had so many upsets and so many just stories that were evolving at all times. Being able to be there and just to be around the energy there was absolutely incredible. And thank you so much, Charles Winslow, who sent me there to cover that event. But I would also have to say, while I was still in Eugene, Oregon, I actually was lucky enough to work for the Eugene Emeralds baseball team, which is the A1 affiliate of the Chicago Cubs, in 2016. And we actually won the championship for our division, which was absolutely incredible. I would say as a sports shooter, that was probably the highlight of my career to this date. I mean, we had 4 different champagne showers in the locker room. This team had gone 42 years without even making the playoffs, and we ended up winning the entire division. And that actually ended up being the same year that the Chicago Cubs won the World Series too. So just to be involved in that family and to be in that organization and to see the guys from the A1 team to the professional team work so hard and to accomplish so much, it was definitely an amazing experience that I'll never forget.
That's very cool. Hannah, how about you? Was there one particular moment that sticks out for you as one of your most memorable?
So as Stephanie was answering, I was trying to think about it. Obviously, the Minneapolis Miracle catch that just happened was fantastic. And then a few weeks later, having the Super Bowl in town and working kind of that bigger jewel event for Getty Images was absolutely fantastic. But the day that kind of sticks in my head was waking up, making coffee, having SportsCenter on, and they said Brett Favre is on a plane to Minneapolis. And I literally, they said that, my phone started ringing. And so the Associated Press called and sent me out there, and that day, and knowing photo mechanics specifically and code replacement, I went, while we had some downtime, while we were waiting for his car to arrive, I set up a template and I did all my code replacement stuff. And so when he got done practicing, I think my photos were already up and on ESPN.com before the Reuters photographer even ingested his card.
Boom. Nice.
So
nice. That's sports photography in a nutshell right there. Keith, how about you? A most memorable moment for you in shooting the wide world of sports?
It would have to be when I shot the college championship with Alabama and the Bulldogs, Georgia. And it was just a surreal game. Alabama had their backs to the wall. They were down 21-7. And then all of a sudden, here comes Nick Saban and company. They come back. It goes into overtime. And just being a part of that whole confetti fiasco with confetti flying everywhere, and just being on the stage when they got the championship trophy and all the festivities involved with that was just the pinnacle of my sports career. It was just surreal. I fell on the ground. I did angels with the confetti, and I just really embellished myself in that moment. And it's just a moment that I'll never forget as long as I live.
That's very cool. That's very cool. Yeah, we're running up against a little bit of time, but I have one quick more question from the audience, and then we'll kind of head into our wrap up. And this is a really fast one, but auto ISO. I have an assumption is what your answer would be, but do you use auto ISO or do you always set it manually? Real quick, just we'll start with you, Keith.
I usually set it manual, but there was a situation when I was shooting the Army-Navy game and it was snowing profusely. I mean, like the snow was unbearable. So I put it on auto ISO because, I just wanted to get the shots, because sometimes when you're shooting in the snow, sometimes your lens will focus on the snow and not the player or the ball or the subject. So at that particular time in the snow, I did set it at auto ISO. But ordinarily, I just set it on manual. That's what
I had assumed. Hannah, how about you?
No. I don't like things thinking for themselves.
Right.
So I have a brain. I'll think.
Good. And Stephanie, how about you?
Yeah, I always set my stuff to manual as well. I did have an experience shooting softball where I was using a remote camera, and it was a very sunny but also overcast kind of day where the clouds were moving back and forth a lot. So for my remote camera, I did set that one to auto ISO just because I wasn't actually able to physically stand there and reset it. But for my two lenses that I had for the covering of the game, my big one and my 24 to my 70 to 200, those were both set to manual.
Yeah, I think again that's a case where experience of knowing the conditions, and once the conditions for the most part I think are generally stable. Obviously they'll change given, especially outdoors, but once you have that condition, keeping it set manually is the way to go. All right, so we're going to wrap around. I'm going to go around one last time. I'm going to ask you guys if there's one piece of advice you would give to any young photographer out there interested in shooting sports. And then if there's any project that you're currently working on that you wanted to give a shout out or plug for, tell us about that as well. And we'll start with you, Stephanie, since you're right here.
Awesome. I totally just forgot what I was supposed to talk about. Sorry.
Oh, just if you have a tip for any young photographer, and then anything that you're personally working on right now.
Oh, right. Okay. Tips for young photographers. I would say keep at it, because sports photography and specifically is extremely competitive, just like the sports of the athletes that they're playing. So just when you feel like you're down or you feel like you're struggling, keep going, because a lot of times in the moments where you feel like you're struggling, that's where your growth is going to come the most afterwards, is realizing how you worked through those problems and then acknowledging, when I have this situation in the future, this is what I'm going to do and this is what I need to prepare so that I can have that not happen again. And just shooting through the action is definitely probably my other piece of advice. Look for the reaction, look for the crowd reactions, look for the coaches cheering, all of it, because that piece of information and those shots can be just as important, if not more important, to tell the overall story of what happened for that game. So just thinking about it more than just the actual standard action shot.
Yeah, when you say shoot through the action, you mean keep shooting after maybe the whistle is gone, but things are still happening.
Yes, or like if a giant dunk, if DeAndre Jordan, because I work for the Clippers, goes up for a big poster dunk, making sure you track him all the way through the dunk, but also while he lands, and then also panning over to the bench if it's on that side to get that bench reaction to the dunk that he just had, can be just as important as any other shot in the game as well. So just thinking about those things are really important.
Perfect. And what are you working on right now? Anything that anyone should check out, or just your site, if you want to drop a link to that?
Yeah, currently I'm working on a couple of postseason video recap, the Agua Caliente Clippers, which is the LA Clippers G League team, for their wrap up of their season. And you can find all of those on my website, which is stephanielovellmedia.com.
Fantastic. All right. Hannah, how about you? We'll skip to you. Any advice for anyone considering a career in photojournalism? And then what are you currently working on?
I think that we kind of covered it at the beginning. It's finding people to kind of mentor you, to talk to. And I think early on, it's important to talk to a lot of people and get a lot of people's input. Later on, you can kind of narrow it down. Like now I only go to 2 to 3 people, and those are my 2 to 3 people I talk to. But earlier on, it was very beneficial for me to hear everybody else's and take bits and parts of their workflow and how they approach photography, and kind of bring that all into my career. So I would say go to workshops, talk to people. You know, Twitter, social media is great now because you don't necessarily have to meet people face to face, like when I was getting into this. And then, you know, Brad Mangin and Ron Vesley, one's out in San Francisco and one's in Chicago, they would get inundated with my emails some days when I didn't want to pester the local people anymore. And then for me coming up, I'm working with a organization called Print Arts Midwest, and we're going to be putting some classes together. I know Camera Bits is working with them as well. So probably doing a workflow course that I'll be teaching if you're in the Twin Cities, Minneapolis, Minnesota area. Doing a workflow class, and then also a project portfolio editing. And potentially, you know, we haven't fully figured out if I will be doing a sports class there as well. So, very and then cool. Sports Shooter Academy.
Highly recommend it.
Yeah.
We did a Twitter chat with Brad Mangin about a year ago. I think he's fantastic. I love his work. And I love how he started just shooting just with the iPhone, right? Yeah. That was
that's his new kind of niche into the market, and you know, get hired to do social media all the time. So
he's great. And Keith, we'll wrap it up with you. We're getting to the end here. What advice would you have for anyone looking to get started? And what are you currently working on? What's a project you're working on?
Right now, the best advice I can give young photographers is this is the process. Start small. Start on the little league level. Then grow. Master the game, whether it be baseball, football, soccer. Start small. There's so many photographers that just want to jump into the NFL, the major league. It doesn't work like that. It's a process, people. Okay? So just try to find your niche, increase your skill set, and be patient. there's so many young photographers that are like, oh, I want to shoot on the sidelines. I'm like, yeah, you and 20 million other people. It just doesn't work like that. And there's a platform that I've associated myself with back in 1988. It's called Today's Photographer. It's called AI Press. So if anybody's looking to get press credentials, you know, that could be a good starting place, because if you're not affiliated with a platform or, you know, a Getty or USA Today, you're not going to get into the professional arena. So go to your local newspaper, see if, you know, if you could freelance for them. It may be like an unpaid intern, but start small and be patient. That's the best advice I can give. And as far as myself, you know, we do like 2 workshops a year on branding, lighting, portraiture, weddings. We shoot details. They usually take place in the Virginia Beach area at the Founders Inn. So if anybody's interested, my next workshop will take place in November. You could reach out to me on Instagram, Cephus, Cephus, and my sports Instagram is Coastal VA Sports, and my website is www.keithcephus.com.
Fantastic. All 3 of you, Keith Cephus, Stephanie Lovell, and Hannah Foslein, thank you so much for spending time with us. I wish we could keep going. I love the nitty gritty of this stuff and down to the details. And I know we had a lot of questions as well. Or we had a few. So thanks to everyone who participated. We'll be, in fact, we'll pick someone from who dropped a good question. We'll send them a Camera Bits little swag pack. We got some lens cloths and some stickers. We'll pick some people who asked questions for that. So thanks to all you who tuned in. Yeah, just get out there and keep shooting all. And you 3 keep creating these amazing images that inspire all of us. I have to say, I'm really a big fan of all 3 of you. Thank you so much for spending this hour with us. And we'll keep tracking. We'll put a lot of the links you talked about. We'll put those in our blog as well. Keith, also, I wanted you double check. You mentioned the AI Press. Was that AIPress.com?
Yeah, AIPress.com, correct.
Okay, cool. Yeah, it was just
Vonda Blackburn. She's the point of contact.
Okay, I want to check that out myself. So that's very cool. So thank you guys again. We're going to be signing off this first Camera Bits panel discussion on sports photography. Thank you very much, and have a good day. Cheers, all.
Take care. Thank you for having us.
Right on.